Makes a huge difference if you'll do me a favor by subscribing and liking the podcast wherever you listen. It goes a long way. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy. In 2012, Cassidy Krug was a U.S. Olympic diver with a shot at a bronze medal. A mistake on her last dive landed her in 7th place, where she missed out on the podium, and her lifelong athletic career came to an unremarkable end. After dedicating her life to a single passion and pursuit, Krug had to figure out what to do next. In this conversation, we talk about that and her new book, Resurface, a guide to navigating life's biggest transitions from a national champion and Olympic diver. She was a national champion at Stanford. And in this book, Resurface, she's connected with dozens of people who've experienced major life transitions, from Buddhist monk to quadriplegic skydiver to record-setting marathoner, a recent divorcee, you name it. And so we have a great conversation where we talk about her life lessons learned, career transitions, life transitions. How do we navigate these life transitions gracefully? And I hope you enjoy this conversation and get value out of it. The goal with this podcast and these conversations is that you can draw one lesson that you can apply to your life, and share this out on social media, share it with friends, like and review my podcast. It makes a massive difference. Thanks. Sweet. Welcome to the Wisdom of Life, Cassidy.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me and having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. I wanted to start with, I know it's a big question, so if you want to take it as you wish, but for your book, you interviewed a lot of different people. And one of the things I was curious about is what did you learn? Not from the writing aspect yet, but just from interviewing those people. What did you learn about life's biggest transition through interviewing, a wide range of people?
Yeah. No. Well, Chad, I wrote a 280-page book and learned a lot. And so let me see if I can pare back the things that I felt like were most impactful for me. The inception of this book was that I was an Olympic athlete. I retired at 27. That transition was so big and intense and kind of kept coming back, long after I thought, I'm through the transition, I've moved on. I kept thinking about it. And that inspired me to first reach out to other Olympic athletes about what their retirements had been like from their sports, and then expand beyond Olympic athletes to people from all walks of life who had experienced as wide a range of transitions as I could find. So everything from marriage, divorce, having children, the death of loved ones, to becoming paraplegic, getting diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's, getting out of prison. And so I think the first thing that I realized through that process, and the thing that led to the book that I ended up writing, is that we all have so much more in common than I thought. I didn't realize that I, could bring my story and my sort of struggles with missing diving, feeling kind of the murk of what do I do next, trying to find community, trying to find a sense of purpose again. I didn't know that I could kind of bring that story to a conversation with someone who had just gotten out of prison after 20 years and share mine, and he shared his, and we ended up finding common ground. So that was kind of the first big thing, and the thing that led to this book was that I believe, all should be telling our stories more than we do and sharing our stories more than we do, and we would find a lot more understanding and solidarity and feel like less alone if we did that.
Yeah. What did that feel like for you when you're like, wait a sec, this person this person that's not in athletics, not in Olympics and all that, for example, that person coming out of prison, wow, we have a lot of a shared experience, a lot in common. What was that feeling like for you?
I mean, it was amazing. It started, my first sense that this could be a much broader thing than I had originally anticipated that would be, was when I was having these conversations with Olympic athletes, and they were saying things that mirrored my friends and family who were not Olympic athletes in my life. Like at around the time I was writing this book, my dad had just retired from 30 years of coaching, and he was sitting on the couch watching TV, thinking about getting older and absolutely not sure of what he was going to do next. And that reminded me of the conversations I was having. You know, I had another friend she was in remission from cancer. She'd had cancer. She'd gone through chemo. She was in remission, but she was facing these ongoing health issues like brain fog, fatigue, and realizing that she wasn't just going to bounce back to where she was before. And that felt similar to the Olympic athlete conversations. So that was my first sort of inkling that we could relate. Before I set out to write a book on something that broad, I really wanted to test it. And that was what led to me actually reaching out to Stanley, who was the guy who had been in prison for 20 years. This was at the very beginning of that expanded book process. I heard about his story in I think it was a donor relations video for a college that he was going to. And I was like, I got to talk to this guy. I got a LinkedIn premium membership for 1 week. I got the trial so that I could reach out to Stanley. It was a total cold email. He responded back. At the moment I got on the phone with him, I still wasn't sure if it would feel weird for me to be like, "Hi, I'm an Olympic athlete. Tell me about your time in prison. Let's compare notes." And then it wasn't weird. I felt like I was saying things that he was nodding along to. He was saying things that I was like, "Yes, I totally relate." And that was so gratifying. It was like a hypothesis that I had hoped would be true. And to be able to connect was amazing.
Oh, I bet. What were some of those things? Yeah.
Yeah.
What were some of
Yeah.
the examples?
So with Stanley in particular, the first thing that he talked about that really connected, and I think with every conversation, like it was equally gratifying, equally amazing to hear the ways people were unique and did not in any way kind of process or think like me, and then also the ways that we came together. And I think every story there's something unique and something universal. So for him, the first thing that kind of jogged my, oh, this is very much like my experience, was him talking about missing the community that he had felt. Like, you spend 20 years in prison, you find your people there, and then you come out and you have to really figure out how to rebuild that with people who may not get it, who haven't shared your experience. And I like sure felt that when I was no longer surrounded by teammates who had been along my diving journey with me. The other thing, like the next thing, and this was something that really hit me, was that we both really needed to redefine success in our sort of post-transition worlds. Stanley was telling me a story about how he had been in prison for about 15 years. He hit his 40th birthday and he became seriously depressed. I think he had just tried for parole and had let himself hope that he would be found acceptable for parole. He was not given parole, and he found himself at 40 in prison. And he was like, I had, no kids, no wife, no job, no house, like all of the things that I had expected to be the markers of success in my life. I didn't have them. And for him, he worked with the prison psychologist, and over, a series of meetings, he started to redefine success for himself. He started to look at, during this time, he had come to terms with the crime he'd committed. He'd come to terms with the trauma that had sort of contributed to that. He'd started leading self-help groups and religious groups of other men who were doing the same. And he was like, I started defining success not by what I had accomplished, but by the impact that I had had on other people. And in addition to being a story that just kind of gives you chills in and of its own self, for me, I was like, I also really had to work to define success, like to redefine what it meant to be a successful human being after 27 years of trying to reach the Olympics and become the best diver I could be. And so in very different ways, this theme came about. And I realized like there's a lot we can share with each other on this.
Did you ever hear this term before when you were diving, identity foreclosure?
Did, yes. My understanding of identity foreclosure is that it's something that you throw so much of your identity into something, often from an early age, that it prevents you from exploring further. Is that kind
Yeah,
of how you
yeah,
see it?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was curious, like, when you were coming to the end or at the end of your diving career, 2012, the Olympics, like, and shortly thereafter, did you feel that way? Like, wait a sec, who am I outside of being this Olympic diver, outside of being an Olympic athlete? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah. I think my answer to that is yes and no. I was really lucky in that my parents are both diving coaches. Diving was the family sport, but they were very purposeful about showing me that I could be anything. My dad would put me to bed at night and he would say, "Good night, my diver, my gymnast, my writer, my mathematician, my anything." My diving coach at Stanford, I went to Stanford to dive. I dove for 4 years there. And then for 5 years after that, I stayed with the same coach. He, on day one of training, brought everybody into the conference room and said, "Here, diving is first and school is first." And we would be stretching and he would be sort of grilling us. Like, I was an English major. And so he'd be sharing David Brooks's latest column and asked me what I thought about it. Like, my friend was in international relations and he would bring that. So he and Stanford was this expanding influence. So I think, like, for me, like in the 5 years after I dove, it was really important to me to not just dive. I got a job at the Stanford Alumni Association and I worked part-time there and went back and forth to the pool. So in a lot of ways, I think I was better set up than a lot of athletes who are very successful from a young age and sort of have all of the momentum and all of the pressure and all of the outward reasoning to really go into identity foreclosure to really focus on their sport. I had a lot of forces that were mediating that. At the same time, for a very long time, every decision that I made had diving at its center. I worked at the Stanford Alumni Association because it was a 5-minute walk away from the pool. Like, I always wanted to live in New York, but I knew I couldn't go and do that, or I didn't do that because I wanted to be in a place where the training was the best. Even like I had a boyfriend at the time and we were sort of on the fence about a future, but it was like, I'm not going to break up. Like, we're not going to rock the boat because I want to be able to focus on training. And when you have a North Star like that and it goes away, there's a lot of emotion that comes up, positive and negative, that I certainly did feel.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be disorienting, right? Like, you can feel where almost like you're in the ocean and you don't know which way is up, which way is down. Like, where am I? Like, what's happening?
Totally. Yeah, I knew exactly which way I was going towards for a very long time and exactly how to make all of the rest of my life organize itself around that. And then I didn't. And not only did I not know what I was going to do next, there was this pressure to be an Olympian at whatever it was that I did next. And I think that it maybe added to the disorientation, or at least contributed to it being difficult to become oriented again, was that every choice I made had so much, like, this has to be my next thing, in the same way that diving was my thing.
Yeah. That feels heavy.
It, I talked it up as a very heavy thing. On the flip side, the upside of that disorientation is like being able to go to New York, which is a city I had eyed from a distance for a long time. Like, being able to explore different things, being able to like go to a wedding and stay on till Sunday instead of like heading home Saturday night so I could practice the next day. Like, the freedom and the possibility and the curiosity and all that stuff was there too. So it wasn't just this like heavy downer for me, but it was like everything all happening all at once.
Yeah. Like rushing at you.
Yes. Yeah. I described it as like feeling like I was in a popcorn machine sometimes. And it's just like all these things are here. Or it sometimes it felt like diving was a dam and the dam had broken. And now it was like I was rushing and I didn't know where I was rushing to, but like things felt, that feeling of movement and change was both exciting and terrifying.
What were your, if you're willing to go there, what were your support systems like during that popcorn experience? Like, who were you leaning on some people, and how did that shape your experience, the way you were experiencing that?
Yeah, I definitely was. I am incredibly grateful to my family for, again, like this had kind of always been their mentality, was that I was bigger than a diver. Like, they had made diving their life, but I wasn't necessarily going to make it mine, and that I was going to be successful and happy and like and find a thing or things afterwards. And so they were very supportive. Having teammates who were also going through similar things at similar times was really helpful. And then in terms of starting to feel like I had some sense of direction. My Aunt Patty, she was both like sort of a personal and a business mentor, was really awesome and instrumental. I spent a long time after that, like at home. I moved from the Bay Area back to Pittsburgh to kind of figure out what the heck, to just get grounded. I spent a long time at home, like Googling different jobs that I might want to do. I had been an English major. I knew I wanted to do something with words and ideas. Beyond that, I had no idea what I wanted to do or what I was qualified for. And again, as mentioned, like I was feeling pressure to be overly qualified for anything that I would try to do next.
Yes.
And I was paralyzed by that. And Aunt Patty, who was in marketing and had a lot of kind of connections in New York, which is where I wanted to be, she was like, let me introduce you to some people that you can have informational interviews with. And at first, I was really resistant to that idea. In my mind, an informational interview introduction was like cheating. But this is how steeped in the sports worldview I was. Like, if you get a warm intro to something, then you might not deserve it.
Yes.
And Aunt Patty introduced, like, brought up the subject of informational interviews when I said I was nervous. She made me a PowerPoint slide, printed it out, and sent it to me of like, why these things can be helpful. She was like, you're not asking them for a job. You're just flattering them by asking them what they like or don't like about their work, and you're going to learn a lot. She then introduced me to people. I went to New York, and I eventually came around and had 15 informational interviews in New York City in the span of a week.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a whirlwind, and it was anybody that I could think of that had anything to do with, that did anything having to do with words and ideas. So broadcast journalists, publishing, advertising, crisis communications. And at the end of that, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. Like all of these like things I had been Googling and had no gut sense of what to go on, suddenly talking to real people in real offices, I was like, I could do this, or I don't want to do this, or maybe I could do this. That was, I think, I don't know where I would have ended up if I hadn't had her as a mentor at that time.
Yeah, right. So it sounds like it brought clarity to your next step.
It did. It's a piece of advice that I kind of like share in the book. I think anytime people aren't sure, and we spend a lot of time feeling not sure, informational interviews, like reaching out to someone, offering to buy them coffee, and asking them what they do and what they like about it, and how they experience it, whether your transition is trying to find a job, or you've just gotten a diagnosis that you're not sure how to deal with, or you're trying to shed something or leave something behind. Finding other people who are living the life that you're kind of curious about and asking them, I think you can do it in almost any situation, and I think it's so valuable.
Yeah, like beyond clarity, along with clarity, what else did you learn from it? What else did that teach you in that compressed time frame?
Right. That's a great question.
Thanks.
I think, well, the compressed time frame certainly helped. I think, it's like you're trying to reach out to busy people in New York, and you're like, I'm curious about this thing, but then if you're like, I'm only here for a week, then it helps you to just talk to more people and get more information. I think the other thing that I learned through that is that people are just so much more willing to help than you think that they are. I think if I hadn't had like Aunt Patty being like, no, do this. No, it's going to be fine. No, you're going to have a good conversation. I was so worried about the imposition that I would put on other people. I was so worried, or there's part of me that was worried that I was going to reach out to someone that's sort of like high up in advertising or corporate communications and then be like, oh, okay, what do you want from me? And me be like, I don't know. And it felt very vulnerable to go into conversations truly because I wanted information and not just because I wanted a job or had a specific ask beyond that. So I think that was a big one. And that's another one that feels like you can extrapolate it as far as you want. People are generally more willing to help than you think that they are. And also now that I've been on the other side of that, they get so much more out of it. Like, it is so great to be able to help people. And it's good for the helpers. It's good for the people that are asking. And I think we feel ashamed of our shortcomings or the things that we don't know. So we don't always reach out. But that was another thing I learned through that process.
Yeah, I know. I've felt where I'm like, I should know this. Like that feeling of like, I should be further. You're talking about the expectations with Stanley. I felt like, well, at this point, I should know this. So I shouldn't be, I shouldn't be asking, I shouldn't be like wondering about X because I should already have this figured out at this stage.
Should is a terrible word.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
It's the worst.
Yes.
And I wish I could just like banish it from my mind and vocabulary, and I haven't been able to do that. But we stop ourselves from doing things or like stay in places that aren't good for us or keep ourselves from reaching out because of the word should so much.
I told you, I think before we jumped on that, like, I started out listening to a bunch of podcasts, and one of the podcasts I started listening to was the Tim Ferriss Show. And so that was like 2014. And um, relates to like, I blanked on it for a sec, but here, but like that should, like, oh, it should go this way or it should be like that, right? And I remember listening even to his first episodes. He's like, well, I'm just gonna do like 6 episodes or something, and then maybe just shut it down. But like there was no expectation attached to that. And he said, and now he's on, I don't know, hundreds, right? Like
Mhm.
getting close to 1,000 episodes and over 10 years of doing the podcast. And I was like, huh, that's pretty cool that it started in a place like, say, for example, being an athlete, and you just start because you enjoy doing it, not, okay, I'm going to someday make a living from this or be in the Olympics or whatever, right? Like, I feel like a lot of times it's easy, especially in the Western world, for us to put outsized early expectations on it,
Totally.
on ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think expectations are should. Like it's the same thing. And I spoke with someone for the book who said to me, I try not to think in terms of passions. I try to think in terms of interests. And to me that relates to the expectations because it's like, especially if you're like me, you've just come out of you're 27, you've just finished diving, you've just had this epic Olympic moment, and then you're like, what's my next passion? The
Yes.
the expectations that you put on whatever like will kill it. Like it's if there's one thing that I wish I could tell myself, looking back, it's don't try to replace diving. Like diving is irreplaceable. Diving was this amazing passion that you had. You're never going to feel exactly that moving on. You're going to feel wonderful things and experience wonderful things that diving never could have brought you. But if you try to all at once kind of heap all of those expectations on whatever it is you do next, it's just too much pressure. Like, and I think that even now, like I think that when I'm ever in the midst of a transition, it's like, how can I nurture the things that I'm curious about or the things that I'm a little bit interested in or the questions that I want to answer? Like, how do I like nurture that kindling rather than expecting like a fire right away?
Yes, totally. I know what I was going to say earlier. Relates to this is like, I feel like this is a lesson. I'm trying to share lessons through this podcast with the world, right? But I feel like this is, and Tim talks about this all the time. It's like, this is like scratching my own itch as well as like you're giving me a gift right now because I definitely need to hear this. And it's funny because someone very close to me was just telling me this like this weekend. They're like, you need to ask for help. Like I'm on the job and there's like certain categories of people that I'll ask for help and then others I just like won't. And the person was like, just ask. Like maybe they can help you. Maybe they know somebody. Maybe, something like just ask. And so like I appreciate what you're saying on like many different levels.
Thanks. Yeah, it's definitely easier said than done. But it's also like, and I think that's the great thing about conversations like these. Like we were talking earlier about how you started a podcast because you wanted to be able to have these sort of deep conversations with people. I had to write a book before I went to like some of my closest friends and asked them like about the moments that made them who they are. And I think in having these conversations, you never know what's going to jump out at you and feel like it's speaking directly to you. And if we'd had this conversation last year or next year, Like if you were slightly different, if you were not Chad and I had the same answer, like we might be speaking a little bit differently. But like, I think the more insight and the more stories and the more people you surround yourself with, the more you give yourself a chance to like hear the thing that you need to hear in this moment.
Yeah, like increasing your area of luck,
Yeah,
right? It's like that surface area of luck. It's like um yeah, it's like the exposure to the possibility.
that's a really great way of putting that. The surface area of luck.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so true.
Yeah, it's like expanding it, right? Because, like you're saying, we all have commonalities, and yet we also have like differences and unique lenses through which we experience the world. So, like you say something at a certain point in time, like that's one reason. Like I love books. It's like it's getting to have a conversation with the author, and you don't just have to do it or only do it once, right? Like I could read your book this year in 2025, and then I could go back and reread it in 2030, and it could speak to me differently because I'm at a different point in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super true. I feel the same way about like my favorite books. I kind of go back and like, oh, that's different. That hit me differently this time. I think we tend to as humans, or at least me, I think I tend to downplay the amount that I change. Like I think
Mm,
we, or at least I, often have an expectation when I'm in the middle of something that it's supposed to last forever. Like maybe like I always knew diving wasn't going to last forever, but like we think of passions as things that are supposed to last forever. Relationships are supposed to be the same. Careers, jobs are supposed to last forever.
yeah,
And we're supposed to be kind of the same person consistently through our lives, which we aren't. Which, something that works really like a job, a framework, a relationship, a philosophy that works really well for us for 10 years might not anymore. Or something that, or like, a book that would have had not much meaning to us for like 10 years, we might pick it up and all of a sudden like something hits us, and it does. Yes, I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit for change and for just the amount that that sort of requires and allows us to continue seeking out and seeing new things in the world.
yeah. For being curious, Dan Gilbert, a psychologist. I don't know if you've ever seen his TED talk. He says in there at Harvard, he says, "We think we're a finished product, all of us as humans, but we're always a work in progress."
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know, like, I don't know where that bias comes from, because if we look at ourselves over time, absolutely we change.
Huh?
But there is, yeah, this expectation that everything is a finished product. Every story ends in happily ever after, or sadly ever after, or something
Yeah.
ever after. Maybe it's hard for us to kind of comprehend like that dimension of time and change. But I think that feels super true.
Yeah, like one of my mentors was a physicist, and he said, like, I want to get to the end of my life, and I want to change at least like more than half of my opinions, and that's like a life well lived. So all these things that I thought and believed, I want to get to my end of my life and be like, nope, no, like that's completely wrong. And I was like, wow, the thing I liked about that, love about that is like that openness to
Mm-hmm.
the possibility, to the growth, to the evolution.
That's so cool. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody having that goal before, but that's such a cool illustration. And I think you're right. Like, I guess everybody exists on a spectrum, right? Of
Yeah.
open to change or openness versus stability, like desire for freedom and exploration and change versus desire for stability and
Security.
concreteness, security. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I actually I want to be more open to change, but I tend to be afraid of it. And I think knowing that about myself has actually been another sort of lesson of all of this deep exploration of transition, is that I do have the capacity to change my mind, like to shift my mind ever so much towards changing my opinions, changing my ideas, changing my lifestyle, trying things that are new and scary. But yeah, it's also interesting sometimes when I talk to people that are just coming from like the opposite side of that and are sort of extreme changers.
What's one thing, like, if you're willing, it's just you and me, like, you're willing
Yeah,
to
sure.
share that you want to change or you want to test even changing, not necessarily just change, but like test the changing. Like you talked about the hypothesis. Does
Right.
something come to mind?
Well, right now, so I have realized about myself that I really love like a big, solid, fat goal, like the Olympics.
Yeah.
I like set me on a goal, let me dive deeply into it. Like, I love that feeling of tiny steps of incremental progress. And a lot of people don't. I thought everybody loved that feeling. And then I got out of diving and into the working world. And it was like, a lot of people don't like that feeling, but I do. So I felt very content, relatively content in like the diving training life because that was organized in that way. I felt great in the process of writing this book. Especially like once I had, a book deal and an editor and a deadline and an advance and then I was like, all right, I just got to wake up in the morning and write the best book I possibly can. And so that is my happy place. And I think it kind of always will be. One thing that I am trying to get better about is like, so now here I am, like the book's launched, the book's published.
Yeah.
And I'm again in this popcorn machine place where I'm like, what's my next book going to be? Like, I have 5 different ideas and I'm afraid to even like start on any. It feels paralyzing to me sometimes to have a lot of possibilities. And the thing that I'm trying to make myself do more of is box some time. Like, I'm going to take a day. I'm going to explore this one possibility. I'm going to research it. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to speak to people. I'm going to like write to where I can, or maybe a week. I'm going to like write this out to the best of my abilities. And I know that process will tell me more about whether I want to keep going. But for me, it's very hard to start. If I don't already have the momentum, it's hard to start the momentum. And that's a change that I'm trying to inspire in myself.
Yeah. How are you going about this? And I'm not just asking because I'm just curious about you, but I think there are a lot of people out there who will be able to relate to this. That like if I could only get the ball rolling, right? Then I'm good. But like getting that start is just so difficult.
For me, time boxing helps a lot. Like, and I think you kind of brought this up when I was talking about my week of informational whirlwind week in New York in interviews. But for me saying I am going to commit to this for a week and I'm going to try to get to this place. I'm going to try to think through this much or spend this much time doing like this much time exploring this for a week. Or yeah, I'm going to go like take a class or take a series of classes to learn something that I think I might be interested in. I'm going to sign up, I'm going to go every week for a couple months and I'm going to reassess after that. So I think making myself make the commitment to a short burst is one way that I get over it versus like, again, trying to think like, I got to start writing my next book now. Like I could procrastinate for forever when I think about it that way, but it's much harder to procrastinate when you're like, I just have to give it 1 week.
Yes.
And then I find myself actually like going and doing the things that I know will eventually lead to me being in my happy place.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, so it's like are you familiar with the saying reduced to the ridiculous? Reduced to the ridiculous?
I love it. No, but I love it.
Like I know this guy that he wasn't doing push-ups, for example, never, like before bed or woke up and did push-ups or anything like that. And he's like, somebody told him, okay, I'll just do one push-up a day. Even if you can't like go down and get up, just like one. And he's like, that's absurd. Like what would be the point of that? And he's like, just do it, man. Just do one. And then eventually, like over time, he was doing like 50 push ups a day on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about that, like with our behavior change, habit formation, when we have like this finite time, when we have this like locked in space, it's like discipline equals freedom.
Mm.
It's like gives us those constraints, like free us up.
Yeah, I think that's super true. And I think, yeah, there's always this tendency to not constrain it, right? To say like, I want to get to here. I want to be in bodybuilding competitions.
Yes.
And in order to do that, I got to do like 700 push-ups a day and I got to eat right and I got to, do 5,000 things. And then we don't do it
Right.
because it's so hard.
Yes.
And yeah, so I think having the discipline to even break down those goals into the tiniest steps makes a ton of sense. And that's the other thing is like if it's totally small, then you really have no excuse not to do it. Or like if it gets just one step bigger. Like if it was like one push-up and like a set of lunge jumps a day, like maybe that suddenly is enough friction that you don't start.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, how can we like reduce or eliminate the friction
Mm-hmm.
so that we're like I just had on Dan Ariely. Are you familiar with his work? A behavioral economist. He's a Duke, and so he studies and writes about like how we're irrational beings, human beings, and so like we know, for example, we should be saving money, but then oh, but I want to buy that
Mm-hmm.
purse, or I want to buy, this or something. And it's like, and so he studies like how do we make basically better decisions in our lives. So like better choices so that we can improve our lives. And at Duke, they have a Center for Advanced Hindsight. So it's pretty cool. Like, okay, think about that. Like, looking forward to look back, right? Because we're all like irrational to a point. So it's like, how do we trick ourselves in a sense so that we do a little bit of the things that bring us joy, that make us come alive, that challenge us, that are good for us, all these things, and a little less of the either getting stuck or the things that are not, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like easy ways to get what's the word? I don't know. There's like easy ways to get those little pings of accomplishment, and then there's like good way, better ways to do it.
Yes.
Like I can get a small amount of good feeling by eating ice cream on the couch, or I
Yeah.
can get a small amount of good feeling by like going and doing a push up. And one of those things is harder than the other one. And so, yeah, it does feel like you almost do have to trick yourself into it sometimes, into like getting into just getting started, into getting unstuck, into like reducing the friction. And then once the momentum takes over, or not takes over, but once you like, start to feel that, then it's easier.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you find it's kind of like running or something. Like you find a flow, you find a rhythm. Like at the beginning, it can be like disjointed. You're out of a rhythm, but then eventually, like okay, you start to find some sort of frequency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all very athletic.
Yeah.
Like all of these things they feel like they relate so closely to training for something and sort of achieving that sense of flow and that sense of motivation. And the ways that it does kind of go step by step. Like you've got to do something hard, and then the feeling of accomplishment of that encourages you to do something harder, and you go and you go and you go, and eventually you sort of get into this like place where you are at using your time and energy and motivation towards the things that you actually want to do.
Yeah, where your interests lie. Yeah. When you were little, were you drawn to writing? Was that something that you loved to do as a little kid, like in elementary school?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't remember when I first was drawn to writing, but as long as I can remember, it's something that I had wanted to do. And that carried like I started a poetry club in homeroom in 5th grade and
Wow.
handed poems to the teacher. I was insufferable. Like
That's awesome.
yeah, really very nerdy. And went to Stanford, was an English major, but with a creative writing emphasis. I have always loved expressing myself and kind of honing the craft of writing. In my mind, it's actually quite similar to the things that I love about diving. Just that incremental progress, that like really getting to apply my perfectionist tendencies to something, like to work step by step to make what I want to happen.
Yeah. And is that the way you felt? Like, has it always felt that way, or has that changed over time for you?
Yeah, it so after I stopped diving, before I got into the informational interviews, I was absolutely sure that I was going to become a writer.
Huh.
I That's one of the reasons I went home to Pittsburgh, was because I was like, I'm starting out at writing. I'm not going to make any money. I need to be in a place where I'm focused and I can write. And I had the worst case of writer's block that I've ever had. And I think part of it was the pressure of making writing be my diving. And I think part of it was like I had loved like my creative writing classes, because like it was a situation in which everybody was paying to be there. We were all like, required to read each other's work. I could write about anything and not have to worry about my audience. And like I got pretty good feedback. And trying to then take that to a world in which like I was going to have to pitch things, I was going to have to come up with ideas that like other people wanted, like that was scary to me. And so I actually I tried for a couple months to be a writer. It became clear that I wasn't going to do that. Did the informational interviews, ended up in brand strategy and advertising, which was actually a place that I kind of enjoyed using that muscle. It is a career in which like both precise and inspiring and emotional language matters. And so I liked the writing parts of that. And then it wasn't until actually 7 years into that this idea for this book on transitions came, and I was able to really apply again like my writing craft to something that I wanted to write, like that I was doing for me and not because I was trying to solve somebody's business challenges or create an ad or something like that. So I think I've always enjoyed the craft of writing, but it feels much better when I have like an idea that's carrying me through and when I'm able to kind of really go in the directions that I want to.
Yeah. You said it came. Can you describe that idea for the book came?
Yeah.
Can you describe like how did it come to you or how did that come about?
Well, it kind of came out of a crisis, like a mini internal existential crisis. So I retired from diving, got into my career, was like, all right, I've moved on.
Yeah.
During the time that I spent working in New York, I hardly wanted to like talk about myself being an Olympian because I really, really wanted to go and prove myself in a different arena. And I really thought for a long time that I was just going to take all the passion and energy and sense of purpose and time and put it into my advertising brand strategy career, and that would give me back everything that diving had, that it would make me feel as proud and as certain and as purposeful and as motivated as diving had. And about 7 years in, I looked up for my work. I had I had started at the bottom of the ladder, worked my way up to like the middle, and I realized that I had been telling myself a lie. Like I did not remember any moment from the past 7 years in the working world with the same clarity that I remembered and felt the last moments of my diving life on the end of the diving board at the Olympics. And so I started to wonder, like, did I make the wrong choice? Like, have I peaked? How have other people done this? Is anyone else feeling this? Like 7 years later, wondering why they're still thinking about their old dumb sport so much? And that was how the idea came. Was this desire to figure out if I was alone, or maybe like reach out to some Olympian who had made that transition with flying colors and could give me a pep talk, or reach out to someone who, was also struggling like me. Like I felt this need to connect. And that was when my writing brain clicked back into gear. And I was like, I really want to explore this topic broadly, deeply, and learn and record and share these stories.
Yeah. Tell me if this hits home, like this resonates, because to me it sounds like it was like you when you're doing the brand strategy, that sort of thing, it was like listening to the noise rather than your signal. And then when you like go, I'm not these like these 7 years, like I'm not feeling the same way, right? Like it was like you were tapping into your signal.
Mm.
What do you think about that, or what? Yeah, how does that hit for you? How does that land for you?
I think I definitely, in the process of writing this book, felt like I found my signal. I think, though, the other thing that complicates that is that ultimately, like the times that I have felt the best, like the time that I felt the best, I was doing some brand strategy. I went from full time, I ended up freelancing and working part time so that I had time for this writing thing. Some brand strategy, some writing my book, some like I had a daughter in this period of time. So like some like ramping up and figuring out how to be a parent. And so I think it was more that the whole time I was working full time, I could not figure out how to make any space in that mindset for anything I was curious about, like for any creative projects. Like, and this idea actually nagged at me for like a year or two before I started working on it, because I just, that all-in-one vision that I had carried over from diving to my career did not leave room, especially it's a creative, complex world. If you're trying to achieve perfection, then you don't have time for anything else. And so I think that for me, it was broadening my definition of success, broadening my definition of what a life well lived could be, enough to make room for me being creative for myself. In addition to, and I kind of I like solving business challenges. I like writing in that way. I like innovating new projects. But I had to figure out how to preserve and protect time for me to be creative for myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And by preserving the time and that space, did it amplify, accelerate, accentuate like your capabilities as a brand strategist? Did it make you better at that?
In some ways, yes. I definitely I think I have grown an ability to prioritize that I didn't have before. And that is helpful in the context of brand strategy, extremely helpful in the context of brand strategy, when so much of that job is taking all kinds of possibilities and possible directions and boiling it down into a clear path. So I think that was a skill that helps with both. I sometimes wonder, like, if I'm not putting like 50 hours into this, like if instead I'm stopping it at 20 or 25, like is there part of it that, is there a stone that I'm leaving unturned? Like, that is a question that I have. But yeah, I think for the most part it's been helpful because it's forced me to make choices. And that was something that I was always sort of afraid to do. And that is important.
Yeah. How is that important? How has that been important for you?
To make choices,
Yeah.
I think it just means that I don't spend as much time doing things that aren't worth my time. And even more than writing my book, having a kid, I think unlocked what I feel like is a superpower of streamlining a lot of the tendencies that I used to ruminate and spiral on, and also being the bump I need to be even more protective of my creative life. Like back when I was working full time, I spent weeks setting my alarm at 5 in the morning because I knew that if I woke up at 5 in the morning, I would have a couple hours to write before I got into my work. And I hit snooze every time. I just couldn't make myself do it. And some reason, having a kid, when I was writing my book, I was waking up at 5 in the morning 4 or 5 days a week. And it was my smartest time. I was when the words were flowing the best. And it felt like such a triumph that I was actually able to do that after spending years of just not being able to force myself into it.
Yeah. Do you think part of it was you didn't have any more wiggle room?
Yeah. I think that I was giving all of the creative energy that I could. And so I would wake up early and be like, all right, well, this thing still isn't perfect at work. So I'm not allowed to devote this time to myself.
Yeah.
So I think taking a step back from the full-time work did create that mental, emotional, energetic, creative wiggle room.
How do you see that benefiting you and your personal life going forward? If you're willing to share. If you're not, that's fine. But yeah.
I mean, it's unlocked a lot. It's unlocked, just, I think in my mind, the change that I'm describing is a change of going from an all in one life to an a la carte life. And it means that I can feel good about, the amount of time that I devote to my husband and my daughter and also the creative pursuits I have, and also strategy. It is very freeing and feels very, I don't want to use the word balance because it often feels like I can't possibly balance everything the way that I want to, but it kind of does because it just makes me feel like a whole person. It makes me feel like I'm striking in all the directions that I need to in order to feel whole.
That's gotta be an incredible feeling at this stage.
It is. It's all it I mean and it's an incredible feeling. It's also, as we were talking about with change earlier, it's very hard to maintain that feeling
Yes.
long term. You know, it's like things come up in work, in writing, in family. You know, there's always something that's threatening to take over the rest of the slices of pie. And so it's probably impossible to like maintain stasis of that feeling. But just knowing that that's what I'm going for and I'm allowed to try for that, like I don't have to direct all my energy into one thing with everything else sort of orbiting it, is very freeing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wonder also, it has that affected like relationships in your life as well? Like, I'm just curious because, like, that all in one type of approach can just be, it's like almost like nobody can pierce my bubble because, like, I got to be focused on this versus like that freeing feeling. I just wonder is like relationships with others in your life, like how that ebbs and flows and allows for that flexibility. That, yeah, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah.
Something you've noticed.
Yeah, I guess I can describe this as in terms of like my relationship with my husband, who I was dating when I was in my laser focus New York brand strategist era. And he was always somehow like, and he had a fancy pants job too. Like he had work that mattered too. And somehow he always made it home in time to like make dinner. And
Wow.
somehow he like went on great vacations pretty regularly, and somehow it was always me that was like, oh wait, I'm gonna be home late, or like making him like wait in the lobby of my building while I like finished up one last email. And he thank god he stuck with me, but he did without any guarantee that this was ever going to change. But actually it was his example that kind of helped me to see there was a different way. He's the kind of person that is very passionate about his work, but also like is passionate about his hobbies and his family and friends, and sees it as very important to not let work expand past the boundaries that he sets for it. And therefore like his work was always like, you know, he every once in a while, he's a scientist, so every once in a while he would get caught by a project and just like code all weekend because he wanted to. But for the most part, like he was just like, this matters to me, but also this matters to me, and I'm just not going to like compromise. And seeing that as an example, like I didn't know people could do that. Like I thought it was workaholic or not work.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have imagined, like I could not imagine when I was in my workaholic laser focused phase ever having a kid and doing that job, because I just couldn't wrap my mind around being able to commit to family in the way that I knew that I would have to. And so yeah, expanding my perspective on what makes a good life certainly helped me in my relationships and my ability to like connect with the people that I love.
The life you lead is the lesson you teach. And so what a beautiful gift your boyfriend, then husband, now husband, gave you by modeling that. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, with your child, like it's not so much like what we say, it's really like how we show up. It's what we do consistently that people see. The ones closest to us see it on a daily basis, on a consistent basis.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's funny, like at first I didn't think it was beautiful. I was kind of annoyed by it.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm here busting my butt.
Yeah. Yes.
And somehow, like, how are you doing this? This isn't fair.
Yes.
And then after time, I was like, oh, I couldn't do this. Could I do, what would happen if I started to think differently about my own work and life and balance? But it's, and in retrospect, like, yes, his example helped me to be a better version, like the version of myself that I wanted to be. But at the time, the disconnect was like, this just, I wish I could do that. Like, this just isn't fair.
Right, right. It's kind of like when something's coming easy to someone and you're like jealous of it. Like, I remember when I did sports and I'd be like struggling with a skill and I'd just be like, all right, I gotta put more energy into it. Like, gotta turn the screwdriver harder, just like, and somebody would be like, no, you just twist it the other way, like boom. And I'd be like, what? That is not, no, that can't be.
But you told me, yeah,
Yeah. Like I
yeah,
thought I had to work so much harder.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it felt exactly like that.
Yeah. When I was in when I was in, I think it was like eighth grade, I was like struggling with algebra and just like spending so much time on it. I mean, same thing happened pretty much every year, but with math. But then I remember talking to my friend Bird, and this might have been like even senior year with calculus, and I was like, "How long are you spending on the assignments?" And he's like, "Oh, 10, 20 minutes." And I was like, "Wait, what?" I'm spending over an hour and a half. And I'm like, "What are you getting?" He's like, "Oh, 199, whatever." And I was
Yeah,
like, "Wait, what?" I got to come over and you got to help me like see this math in a totally different way because I'm spending way too much time and not getting the result I'm after. So I love like what you're saying where that like perspective taking, like opening the aperture, like opening going like, "Oh, what if this? What if that?" versus like, "Oh, it just has to be this one way."
totally. Yeah, and I think I'm always going to need somebody providing that help, or like I'm always going to need to be trying to open it a little bit more. Like I think it's a side effect of that thing I love most about diving and love most about writing is the like laser focus, incremental progress, repeating something over and over and over and getting a little bit better at it. That's great. The downside of that is that your aperture is very small.
Yes.
And even to go back to diving, thank God I had a coach because I was one of those people that you know that feeling when you're trying to do something and you can't quite do it, and then it's like your brain turns off and you're just like, I gotta do it, I gotta do it, I gotta do it, I gotta do it, and then everything goes to shit. Like
Yeah.
it
Yes.
and you're like, I don't know why it's not working. I'm working so hard, but
Yes.
you've lost all sense of perspective and you're just trying to like cycle through. I see it all the time in diving. Like I see it in my larger life. I see it like I teach trampoline on the weekends now. I recognize it in my students all the time there where they just like they get so laser focused on what they can't do that they just totally forget what they can do.
Yeah.
And I think I will always be uh grateful for people that can help me open the aperture at the right moments. Like my coach in the diving time would like kick me out of practice if you had. He'd like sit down,
Uh-huh.
stop, go away for a minute or two, and then come back and try again because your like rage right now is not helping.
Yeah. It's like hitting your head against the wall, just over. Yeah. What do
Yeah.
you do with the kids with the trampoline when they get like that? What have you found? What practices, and maybe it's individual, different approaches, but like what are a few of the approaches that you've used to help them like step back, change, and make a left instead of a right in the maze, so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's actually funny. I don't teach very many kids. Most of my clientele are adults.
Oh,
And most of
okay.
them have never, many of them have never done acrobatics before or
Wow.
like much sports before. And so I teach this very recreational trampoline class. And so they are extra susceptible to this tendency because they think they can just I think if you do sports particularly like fine muscle acrobatic sports for long enough, you learn the difference between easy, simple and easy. You learn that you can know exactly what you want to do and still not be able to do it, and that's the work. But people that are not used to learning with their bodies don't know that. And so I think they get stuck in this trap quite a lot. And so for me, the first thing I do is like they'll just start like not taking very many bounces between their attempts at whatever it is they're learning. And I'll be like, okay, you need to stop bouncing fully before you try this again. And then if that doesn't work, then it's like, okay, somebody else needs to get a turn. You need to like get off of the trampoline and then come back. Or we're going to do another skill to like reset our brains for a second
Yeah.
before we get back into this laser focus thing. So that just within like the very finite context of a 1 hour class, that's what I do.
Yeah, that resetting. Do you do anything with breath work with them?
No, but that actually I think would be really effective.
Yeah.
Like you can kind of try to reset with your brain, but breathing can help your body do it.
Yeah, yeah, because you used the word rage before. I remember like when I was a kid and I'd be raging, I would like my breathing was real rapid, short, fast, right? Like, so when I think about like slowing down, I'm taking a deeper, longer, slower breath.
Yeah. I think that would be super effective. Like I definitely and I used breath work a ton as a diver.
Yeah.
And it was so helpful. It was a revelation. I was always sort of, for me, it was because I was nervous. I had a lot of anxiety
Yeah.
um, about being in competitions
Like
and
performance anxiety.
performance anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in diving, like you often, like, it's a weird sport because you have to be on top of you have to be exactly in the right state for like a minute. And then you go and sit down for half an hour while everybody else dives. You're wet and you're cold and you're probably like huddled under a parka. And then you have to get back up to like exactly the right state again for a minute. And then you do it again. And so it's such an important like moment to be able to like use your breath, like be mindful, like use all of these different techniques to try to optimize yourself for exactly the right state in that time.
Yeah. That sounds incredibly challenging because it's such a short time when you have to be in that optimal state, and such a long period of time, like relative, where you're not, where you're sitting around. So it's like, okay, I got to be here for this little bit and then expand out and then like right back again. It's like, wow, what a skill.
Yeah, it does feel like a skill because it definitely wasn't something that I automatically knew what to do with.
Yeah.
I was the queen of uh, being in an okay state of mind, like, you know, being like upbeat and whatever in that half an hour between. And then I would climb the ladder and be like adrenaline spikes. All of a sudden, everything's sort of cloudy and I like my legs are shaking. So it was a very interesting exercise and one that I still use sometimes. Like for me, one of the big tricks was like listening to the same song between every dive, breathing in 5 counts, holding 3, breathing out 5 counts, holding 3, focusing on the song so that I wasn't letting my stray thoughts like invent catastrophes, like getting myself neutral enough between dives that then when my adrenaline rose as I like climbed the ladder, it rose to the right place.
What was the song, and like what happens when you hear it now?
It was Sail by AWOL Nation.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Does that ring a bell? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Look at it. You'll recognize it.
Okay.
It's funny because it's such a not hype song. It is like so steady. And whenever I hear it now, I have flashbacks. Like
Yeah.
I think about Olympic diving and I also sometimes think about like I got very into the flying trapeze after I finished diving. And so I also sometimes think about that. But like I put myself back in that like athletic, like everything on the line
Yeah.
moment when I hear that song.
Whoa. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast with Josh Waitzkin. Are you familiar with this guy?
No.
There's a movie and a book called Searching for Bobby Fischer, and it's about Josh. He was a junior chess champion, and 8-time national champion in chess, and then he became a world champion in martial arts, 2-time world champion in martial arts. And on this podcast, he was talking about when he was doing the martial arts like training, he would listen to 8 Mile by Eminem over and over and over again. So like now when he hears that song, he immediately like goes back to like his fighting mode. So he has to be like careful about where he is or whatever. Like he has to disconnect from it because it's just so visceral. He feels it in his body.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say I have to it like triggers a rage or anything like that,
Yeah.
but it's more just like I want to go be alone right now so I can feel this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Like with music, right? There's a sports psychologist with the British, or was with the British Olympic Federation. He was working with a boxer, and the guy was listening to like pump up music before he'd go into the ring and then like messing up,
Mhm.
making miscalculations, right? So they played around with the music and realized that he actually needed to listen to calming music before he went into the ring. So he started listening to Zen violin music, like very meditative, calming, and then he started performing better at the Olympics and other competitions because he was getting too amped up.
That was exactly my experience, except for the Zen, except for the my solution was Sail by AWOL Nation. But like many of my competitors would like yeah, listen to like pump up music and like a lot of them would dance and that has its own benefits because it's like it takes a tense moment and it forces you to be tensionless. Unless like me, you are like dancing makes you feel tense.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I tried that, but that was I think never going to be the solution for me. And then I made myself this whole playlist of like songs that just made me like upbeat and happy, and that was too much. Like if you're always trying to like get to the peak of anxiety. 'Cause anxiety can be good. Like you're always trying to get to the peak without going over. And the intense music got me to the peak, and then I would get into the ring. Like I would get on the diving board and just go way over, and so I had exactly the same process. And there was a lot of trial and error that involves some like spectacular crashes sometimes. And and then I got to my like very even keel, very low energy music.
And so, yeah, so that was like an experimentation process for you.
Yeah, I mean, not on purpose. Like it would have been nice if the first thing I tried had worked. But yeah, I remember like I kind of first thought of music as a tool a couple years or maybe a year or two before my final Olympic trials and Olympics. And I definitely remember, you know, trying to dance like my competitors did. But of course, like dancing makes me feel awkward and anxious. So that's not the right mindset. And then trying to like sit still but listen to music that made me feel happy and upbeat, but that was too much. And then finally realizing that like, and even like going into Olympic trials of my second to last diving meet ever, I had made myself a playlist of sort of even keeled music. And then it just ended up like I listened to this one song. I felt great my first dive and was like, we're just going to keep with this. And so so there's prelims, semifinals, and finals at Olympic trials, and then prelims, semifinals, and finals at the Olympics. I listened to the exact same song.
That's cool. That's really neat.
Yeah.
That is
And I
really
think for me, like, I'm not sure classical violin would have worked as well because this had such a specific beat to it that worked with the breath work that I was doing. It was like interesting enough that I could kind of focus on the words um, as an aid in just not thinking of all the other stuff I didn't want to think about. Like, it was great.
yeah, the way it exactly the way it focused you to block
Yeah, it
out
was a
so to speak.
totally like it was a meditative. It was a meditative tool basically, and it worked so well.
Do you in terms of writing, do you like listen to anything when you're writing?
It's something that I no, I can't listen. I don't listen. Occasionally, I listen to songs without words when I'm
Uh-huh.
writing,
Yeah.
but I think I'm better off with silence.
Okay.
Anything with any sort of words at all, my brain is like
Yeah.
shot.
It's distracting.
Yeah. But like one thing that I want to explore, one of those like five zooming around possible ideas for a next project is there are times of day, and I learned this like in the morning, 5 a.m., everything made sense. Like the words just flowed, like editing something that I'd written the day before. Like I knew exactly what I had to do. Like it was like a magnet, like hitting the refrigerator, just like locking into place. And then every once in a while, I would try to like edit after dinner time and after I'd put my kid to bed,
Yeah.
and nothing made sense. I like could not find my voice, could
Yeah.
not find the signal to save my life. And I was like, I'm a terrible writer. Like it's the muse is gone. Like I just can't do it. And finally, my husband was like, don't edit after bedtime. You
Yeah.
cannot, you're not
Yeah.
allowed. And so I'm really excited to explore like what are the environmental things, music, smell, time of day, like what
Yes.
are the things that contribute to like you being the best version of yourself.
Are you familiar with Daily Rituals by Mason Curry, I think, this book?
It's on my list, but I
Okay. So check it out. There's also one for women. I'll grab it real quick here. Let me just make sure that's right. Yeah, Mason Curry. Yeah. So it's super fascinating. Daily Rituals by Mason Curry, how artists work. And what's cool is like it's just little short pieces, on these 160 something different artists. But it's like you see how just different, like you're talking about, like one person's like, oh, they start working on something, whatever, painting at midnight, and another person's 5 a.m. and another person's taking a bunch of breaks, and another person's like just blocking out, like, all right, this time period. And it's super fascinating to see, like, yeah, like Oliver Sacks here. I get up around 5 a.m. or so, not out of virtue, but because this is the way my sleep cycle goes. And then I go for a swim, and then I get to the office and I do my work, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
interesting, right? Like, so yeah, check it out if you're interested. It's like you were talking about with your husband of like models. It gives you like a whole array, like a tray of like different famous people and the way they work, right? Like their process, and it's like, whoa, I never thought about it doing it that way.
Yeah, I absolutely will. That has been really high on my mind recently. Because it's like when you're doing something that you think you should be able to do, but it's not the right time or the right state or whatever, and you can't do it, you're like, what is wrong with me? What's
Totally.
happened to my brain?
Yes.
And yeah, both knowing that there are all like every artist or every creator or everybody has their idiosyncratic things is awesome. But like figuring out why those things happen, like that's pretty curious about that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like like some people wanted supreme silence and no interruptions, and other people is like all this stuff is going on around them,
Mm.
like for example, like some writers that would like go to a coffee shop and there's all there's a people and there's noises and all that, and then other people that are like go to a quiet space and the basement of the library or something, and it's like
Yeah. I have a friend who's a sports journalist, and he was telling me about a very famous football coach who constantly in his office has like three 24-hour news networks all on TV at the same time, along with like an episode of some cartoon. Like he constantly has like four different things blaring at all times. And like that is what he needs to feel in his element.
yeah, for me that would be I could not function.
Yeah. I can't even I remember like that dorm room feeling of walking down the hall and someone's playing one song on one side and someone's playing another song on the other side. And like I can't be here right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm out. Well, Cassidy, this has been awesome from my perspective. I hope just a little bit has been wonderful for you.
Absolutely.
And so, like in closing, is there any thoughts you'd like to close with? Any final thoughts? Like, where can people follow you and get your book? And yeah, what any final thoughts that you want to
Yeah.
close with? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I kind of going to close where we opened, which is that
Mm.
I the biggest thing that I learned through the process of this and the thing like the homework that I give when I'm talking to people about the book is you don't need to be writing a book to ask people about their biggest transitions.
Oh,
Like find someone that you want to get to know better. Sit down and say like what are the biggest turning points of your life? And then like interview them. Ask them questions, like ask about the who, what, when, where, why of it. Ask them how they feel like that moment changed them. And in telling you that, they're telling you who they are and how they got to be that way. And for the people that I spoke with that I was already friends with, I feel like we became so much closer. For the strangers that I cold called, like they became friends, like, and I learned so much about myself. I think a lot of the people that I talk to learn things about themselves just because like having someone that's that invested in your story and that then like listening actively is awesome. And so I think that everyone should do that. And then in terms of my book, it's Resurface, A Guide to Navigating Life's Biggest Transitions. You can see it back
yes.
here. And you can find it anywhere books are sold. I recorded the audiobook myself, so that's fun. Um, and I guess follow me on Instagram too if you want to keep updated at Cassidy Krug.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was awesome. Like I said, it is so nice to be interviewed by somebody who's asking good questions and focused and like and making me think of my own story differently. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool, right? Exactly. Sometimes I'm a person where like sometimes when I talk and somebody asks me a question and I talk, I'm like I have another level or layer of a realization or like a new take on something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. Like shift the perspective a little bit, and it unlocks so much. Like
Yeah.
just the slight difference in how you interpret yourself. And it's such a gift to be able to have those conversations. So thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and if you liked it, please share with a friend on social media. That goes a long way to promoting this podcast so I can continue to interview and share these conversations with fascinating people. You can follow me on social media, Chad Stoloff, and visit my website, chadstoloff.wordpress.com, for more information. I'd love it if you would leave a review to support the podcast. Thanks so much. Until next time.